help set the stage for our audience about how you approach the importance of AI in medicine through what you do?
Thanks, Meg, for having me, and thanks for that question. We view AI as this remarkable trend that we're sort of obligated to explore, right? That we're obligated to be open-minded to, and that presents a phenomenal, not only investment opportunity, but patient impact opportunity. One of the founders in a portfolio company of ours, in Citro, was actually Daphne Kohler, who used to be an AI professor at Stanford. And she often makes this interesting analogy back to computers, right? Which is sort of, hey, 30 years ago, when computers were becoming more mainstream, it would have been crazy for knowledge industries and industries like ours to sort of say, hey, we're okay. We don't need that technology. We don't need to think about that technology. We're doing okay the way we are, right? And so that's kind of how we look at the opportunity that AI presents today, which is, you just heard about this massive implosion in healthcare biomedical data that could benefit from AI tools and technologies to augment the existing expertise in our fields. And we're absolutely, on the prowl for great companies and great founders who say, I want to use that to augment what I can do so that I can do more. And that's kind of how we look at it, is that today the companies and researchers and entrepreneurs embracing AI should look a little bit like those that embraced computers a few decades ago. And 30 years from now, it will be inconceivable to not be incorporating this type of technology into great medicine applications.
Jim, same question to you. How does it play into the kinds of investment decisions that you're making?
Well, Meg, first of all, thank you, and thank you to the CNBC team to pulling all this together. My job since 2017 has been, from an investment standpoint, figure out where the best cancer or other types of medical data might be, whether it's Memorial Sloan Kettering, MD Anderson, Hopkins. Start with highly proprietary, significant data, license that data into a startup, which is, of course, what Breyer Capital backs, because we do believe AI and medicine are perhaps the most attractive new investment opportunity I've ever seen, and others, Michael Dell last week, where I interviewed Michael in a fireside chat, would agree. But bringing together the brilliant 32, 35-year-old AI machine learning people out of Google, out of Amazon, out of Microsoft, and having them work closely with Nobel Prize-winning doctors, the great hospitals, the great medicine specialists, is really challenging, but that's where the breakthrough investment returns will be, both public and private.
And Sanjiv, tell us from the company perspective how you guys at Relay use AI and technology to improve what you do.
Thanks again, Meg, and thanks to Vineeta and Jim as well for sharing their perspectives. We at Relay Therapeutics are a new breed of company that sits at the intersection of leading-edge experimental techniques that you'd see in many biotechs, but we're combining those with new and novel computational and AI machine learning approaches. And our goal is to make the discovery of medicines both more efficient and effective. And I think I'll start by saying that this time artificial intelligence is real, and we've seen many dawns over the last few decades of using tools like computation to make the discovery of medicines both more efficient and effective, and it hasn't really come to fruition. I think this time our belief it is, and the belief comes from how impactful these tools have been in other industries. We've seen these industries like entertainment, financial services, retail transformed in our lifetimes. And I think it's right now to see that same transformation in healthcare. So at Relay, we focus very clearly on making medicines. And we choose biologically validated proteins that we know are implicated in diseases. And unfortunately, we've not been able to make effective medicines against using traditional approaches. And we combine leading-edge experimental approaches, because remember, the experimental techniques are still also moving at innovative paces. And we combine those with AI and machine learning and computational power. And we understand how to drug proteins. Then we find novel starting points for chemical matter. And then we use these tools, both experimental and computational, to then create medicines that we can put into clinical trials. And it's no longer science fiction. We have now 3 experimental medicines in clinical trials. And although early last year, we were able to show our first clinical proof of concept for our approach. So we're excited about how these tools will transform healthcare.
And just right back to you, Sanjiv, on that question, has AI, it sounds like as you described it, it opens up potentially new targets that we may not have been able to access without the power of artificial intelligence. Does it also speed up the development timelines?
I mean, it's important to note that all these tools can be used right across the healthcare value chain. From exactly as you said, right at the beginning is trying to understand and elucidate novel biology. What's causing all of these diseases? Many of them, which unfortunately using conventional approaches, we have not been able to elucidate. And so there are lots of companies focused on that. Obviously, companies like us are focused on making medicines. And so, yes, the goal is over time to make the cycle times longer or shorter. As you know, making a medicine can take up to a decade. And so if you can reduce that time, that's very effective. But that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is improving patients' lives. And so if you can solve a problem that's not been solved before, even if it could potentially take longer, using machine learning and AI is still just as effective. So I think the focus on cycle times is important, but it's not the only thing. I think the focus really is on creating medicines that will improve people's lives.
And Vineeta, back to you. I was intrigued by the time frame you mentioned, that in 30 years it will seem ridiculous if people haven't adapted or adopted this technology. Do you think 30 years feels like really long to me? Do you think it will be really more pervasive sooner than that? Why did you use that time frame? I guess I'm wondering.
I do. I was just making the analogy back to computers because I think it's so interesting to reflect on our lives today, not only our lives as patients, as consumers, but also the lives of businesses in our industry and expert talent in our industry, and ask that question about computers because it truly seems crazy, right, for us to imagine a world where we would avoid or choose not to leverage such an interesting set of tools. And I think sometimes people with artificial intelligence and machine learning tools get overly fixated on, well, will it replace the experts? Will it, can it do as well as the experts? But that's not the lens through which we look at the most enabling and inventive technologies, like computers felt 30 years ago. We look at it through a lens of, can they augment our most expert humans, our greatest physicians, our greatest researchers? And I think it will be imminently obvious that not only in 30 years, I think personally within 5 to 10, or as Sanjiv is saying today, right, at many of the biotech companies and healthcare companies that we have an opportunity to invest in, we invest in them because they are actually leveraging these tools today to make, better decisions on behalf of, let's say, your medicinal chemistry team, to augment them such that they can pick better molecules or put the right molecules into experimental testing or predict in advance the toxicity profiles of certain medications. And so in no step of that value chain, as Sanjiv described, are you removing the extraordinary talent that exists in our industry, but you are already today and in the next 5, 10, 20 years, going to see that talent be augmented and empowered to really have this superpower, which is something that no human could do. And that's really the lens I like thinking about AI through, which is not can the AI do what a human expert is doing, but again, a relentless focus on where can the AI give me an insight that no human could have had. And that's such an empowering view and so exciting, really, for patients and entrepreneurs to think about how to leverage.
And thinking about, one of these tools that's kind of just burst onto the consciousness of everyone is ChatGPT. And Vineeta, just sending it back to you on that question, are you seeing an impact of that in medicine now? I mean, what kind of role will that play, do you think, in our ecosystem?
I'm in the category of optimists, for sure. I think it's extraordinary the level of reasoning and the level of synthesis that such a tool provides in a space where, I'm a physician. We are tasked with ingesting an extraordinary amount of medical information, and that medical information is reaching a fever pitch of volume today. Today, it's very difficult for a physician even to stay on top of the literature in their field, the trials in their field, let alone sort of what you heard described about the MD Anderson research infrastructure, let alone sort of learnings from the corpus of patient data treated over the last, many months, years, days, and so on. And so I think, I'm definitely in the category of optimists. You saw Microsoft already announced that there's going to be some integration of that technology with their dictation software for doctors. So there could be immediate workflow implications whereby, maybe some of the administrative tasks in healthcare, which unfortunately do contribute to significant physician burnout and sort of a misallocation of physician time and provider time as a whole in our ecosystem. So maybe there are ways for in the workflow of seeing patients, creating documentation, interfacing with our payer ecosystem, there may be really exciting ways for GPT-4 and other large language models to contribute to a reduction in burnout. But, as Sanjiv mentioned, we see a lot of examples that are, closer to real biology discovery as well. What if a physician could have the opportunity to ask from a patient's tumor sample, hey, what does the geometry of these cells mean for your likelihood of response to different therapies? Often physicians have 3 options, and they all looked reasonable in clinical trials, and that's just the reality today, is that we'll pick the one that looked a little bit better than the others in a cohort. But what does that mean for me as an individual patient, for my tumor, for my cancer? And those are the types of applications where I think the AI tools will really have a profound impact.
Jim, as you're thinking about building companies, this is such a specialized area. You start with biotech as such a specialized area. Then you add in artificial intelligence and big data and computer science, and you get, the desire for somebody who has really specialized training. What does the workforce look like, and what is the pipeline of people being trained in this kind of work look like?
Meg, the single biggest challenge day to day, week to week for me is to bring the interdisciplinary individuals and teams together that you described, whether it's biotech, computation, specialized chemistry, and have them all working together. What I like to say when I'm speaking to students, as I did last week at University of Texas here in Austin, or Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, this is the single biggest opportunity I've ever seen. However, make sure you're studying linear algebra, make sure you're studying computation, make sure you're studying biology and chemistry, because all of the really fundamental opportunities, and this is confirmed with the rapid increase in big tech's interest, is about these technologies that sit at the intersection of computation and science.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that, especially, mentioned algebra. It's something I never thought I would use again after school, so it's good to have a reminder that we need to be doing that. Are you seeing a lot of interest among young people in actually doing this kind of thing? Is industry doing a good job in terms of making this like an attractive place for people to go? And you mentioned big tech. Is there kind of a push-pull between big tech now and the biotech space in looking for talent?
It's a wonderful question. My personal view over the last 12 months, our mega cap companies, based on direct meetings with Satya and Tim Cook and others, are not just doubling or tripling down on healthcare and medicine. It's 10x, 50x over the next couple of years. And so I'm very optimistic that the cloud services for Microsoft and Amazon will be great beneficiaries. The talent today that I see, which is so exciting in these areas, are the 30, 35-year-old alumni of Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, others, Microsoft, of course, that want to go into this field. They are on a mission either through personal family history or a view of the opportunity that this is where they want to spend the rest of their careers. And rarely have I seen the 28 to 32-year-old 10-year alums of these wonderful mega cap companies from a technology standpoint decide this is how they want to spend the rest of their careers working at this intersection of computation and science.
Sanjiv, we've been talking a lot about how this technology can make everybody smarter. But what are the limitations to it right now? One of the anecdotes that kind of comes to my mind is that, in training AI in pathology and identifying cancers, skin cancer or something like that, the AI said, well, it's skin cancer if there's a ruler next to it, because people used it to measure how big the mole was, So there's sort of this like dumb AI kind of questions here. What are some of the places where AI really hasn't caught up?
Look, I think there's a lot of hype around AI and machine learning, and there continues to be, lots of press releases. There, people say, you can push a button in the metaverse and you'll get a life-changing medicine out. And I just don't think we're there. We are looking at incremental change over time because, I'm an optimist like Vineeta, but I'm also a realist. Like, I'm at the coalface every day, and there are some significant challenges to overcome. First one is just the focus of, which of these many, many, many problems across the value chain are we trying to solve? And I think, for us, we've chosen a very specific problem to solve, which is, trying to find medicines that can bind to a protein and do exactly what we want. And I think across the value chain, you're going to see lots of individual problems trying to be solved. And then I think we've tackled the second one, which is data. You need high-quality, clean data sets represented in the right way. And that's not easy to get, because as you know, data is generally dirty, it's kind of fragmented, it's not all focused on exactly what you want. And so again, I think over time we will develop these big, clean data sets that we need, and also then hand in hand, great algorithms. But I think you've hit the nail on the head already with Jim's comment around people. The availability of bilingual scientists is going to be rate limiting for us, and that bilingual meaning they are well-versed in computational science and then one of the experimental disciplines of physics, chemistry, or biology. And then I think the final barrier to this becoming broad spread is a cultural one. We saw it at the turn of the century with retail, and the bricks and mortar retailers were not able to pivot in, and we saw the emergence of Amazon and tech-based retailers. And I think we're going to see it again here, which is now you have all the big tech companies. It's not so straightforward to incorporate experimental approaches. And so I think, again, we'll see the rise of the digital native companies because there you can build a culture bottom up that has both of these worlds inside of it. And so I think, there are plenty of use cases that it's providing value in today in terms of machine learning and AI. But I just want to be cautious that it is a realistic approach to say we'll see incremental change over years. This is not going to happen in weeks or months.
It's an important point to make. And Vineeta, to take that into a slightly different direction, we're talking about where maybe AI, hasn't come that far, or just warning about, overselling AI. What about the perils of AI? What should people, be going into it with their eyes open about that, we may not be thinking about when we think about all the wonderful things it can do?
Yeah, the lens that's a great question, I think, and it applies to both the biotech realm, as Sanjiv was saying, as well as the healthcare delivery realm. To me, the big differentiator that we look for in companies, when we invest in companies deploying AI at Andreessen Horowitz, is actually integration with the rest of the healthcare ecosystem. And that's really important. And so one of the things I worry about is an AI technology that isn't actually deeply integrated with the users of that AI. It relates to Sanjiv's point about bilingual talent, and sometimes an individual person is not necessarily bilingual, but you can create teams that are very bilingual. And so I totally agree that there's a very exciting, interesting talent opportunity coming from some of the big cap tech companies and big cap biopharma companies. But they do need to both come together, I think, to create really special companies that are capable of impacting change. I'll give you a real example, which is that AI has created a lot of interesting opportunity to interact with patients in a really proactive way, right? We send patients home on medications all the time. We send them out of our office in the clinic and we say, hey, go to CVS, pick up this medication. I hope you pick it up and I hope you do well on the medication. And then we wish, as doctors, that we could talk to them all the time, right? Hey, did you pick up that med? Did you take that? Did you take it? Did you have the certain side effect? Hey, on day 2, your skin might peel. And there's all this kind of proactive, predictive type of conversation that would be great if AI could help us know that, hey, the last 1,000 patients who took this drug all experienced, or a large fraction of them experienced something 3 days later. Wouldn't it be great if on day 2 you could message them, right? That's the type of application that, AI could empower. But if there's no doctor on the other side or no care team triaging the responses that a patient might have to that question, then you're sort of hosed, right? And you've created a risk situation where a patient was actually trying to interface with the healthcare system, but you didn't have the appropriate staffing behind it. And so that's another example of where the bilingual team is really important, and the integration with our existing care delivery fabric, our existing drug development fabric is so important. So we're on the lookout, I would say, for great AI talent, but AI talent that wants to integrate with existing infrastructure and empower it to be better.